Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is our weekly broadcast of delivering truth to youth and others.
Yeah.
So if you're not a Ute, you can stay tuned, and you might want to pass this along as what the Utes called a podcast. So you can go to the Doc Owen Show, DocOwenshow.com. Look in the upper right-hand corner, kind of the very first page, and you'll see our player, and you can download, or your Ute friends can download the broadcast, the most recent broadcast, right?
Right.
Or I'm going to tell you some other ways to get there in just a minute. We are all over the social media as DocOwenShow.com. Or not the .com, just Doc Owen Show. DocOwenShow, all one word. Facebook, Twitter, etc. Speaking of Twitter, I want to give a very, very thankful shout out to my friends at PJNet, Patriot Journalist Network. That is one of the oldest and longest standing networks out there of, connectivity with various and sundry social media, messaging, et cetera, et cetera. I think almost all, they've now created PJNet_TX for Texas. They've created a state organization for each. They've not busted themselves up, but they've expanded out to have a state organization, PJNet _whatever the two-letter acronym for your state is. And I think almost all 50 of those state organizations are now following us on Twitter. So thank you very much. And you just got a notice of the show. Spread this to the rest of your PJ network. Do a retweet of the Doc Owen Show. We would greatly appreciate it. The Twitter network is, for now, by far the best way to find us and follow us. We have to do something before I go any further. I am joined in the Hilltop studio tonight by...
I'm a surefire.
And...
Uncle Bachi.
There. I never can remember whether I do that before or after the social media thing.
Doesn't matter.
It's all good.
It gets plugged in there
as long
somewhere.
As it's done, it's done.
There you go. We have a blog, which I've already mentioned, DocOwenShow.com, which is expanding and growing and getting posts from now and again. And we have free apps for both iPhone and Android. Those are absolutely no charge. Go to your relative store and download the app, and out there will be our entire library of podcasts. And it's really a great way to follow us and to spread the word. We greatly appreciate it. We begin every show, beyond what you just heard of, like self-advertising, in a very traditional manner. Ms. Surefire gives us an inspirational quote. Uncle Bachi, as a rule, follows it with today in history. Something interesting that happened today. And if he can't find anything from this date in history, he's allowed to fudge a day back or a day ahead or, so somewhere during this week, there's bound to have been something to have happened in history, and Uncle Bachi comes up with it. And then I close out that traditional section with a leadership quote of some kind. So having said that, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote, as usual, comes from brainyquote.com. BRAINY quote.com. And tonight's quote comes from a gentleman that I would assume most of us would have heard of or even known. He was John F. Kennedy, one of our past presidents.
Yep.
That unfortunately was assassinated and
Yes,
way before his time.
Yep.
Taken away. So tonight's quote comes from him, and it is, "Change is the law of life, And those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future.
Hallelujah.
Do it again.
That is good.
Do it again.
Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future.
Man. You hear that, all
So
you?
true.
You hear that, all you statue-destroying
man.
idiots? I'm sorry, was that out loud?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
It was,
And
but
well
it
phrased.
was good.
Not only out loud, but on the
There you go.
radio as well.
Yeah.
Uncle Bocce, what happened in history, man?
Okay. There's so much talk right now about General Lee, but I'm not going to go there.
It was a dodge.
Yeah, it was. The General, yeah.
It was on the
Dukes
Dukes of Hazzard. That's
Yes,
right.
there you go.
Look
There
it
you
up,
go.
all you Utes. Look it
It's
up.
part of our film history.
That's
Look it
right.
up.
Okay. Well, in 1776, General Lee recognizes Georgia's value. Now, all of you are jumping the gun and saying, he's talking about Robert Lee. No, I'm not. I'm talking about the American General Charles Lee, who was from Georgia, or from South Carolina and Georgia. And
Was he like the ESP?
there's a whole history about Georgia, and he pretty much was the governor of Georgia, and he recognized that Georgia was a lot more important than most people thought it was.
Well, wait.
But-
Did that happen today? Is that what you're saying?
No. This
Okay.
this is.
You just sort of threw that in.
Did I not say the year? Yes, that was 1776.
Okay, August the 20. Okay.
4th, 1776.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just side. Then in 1814.
On August the 24th.
August 24th, 1814.
Okay.
Remember what war that was? We were at war then.
That was the War of 1814.
The War of 1812.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Oh,
Okay.
it carried on. Yeah, it was
Well,
extended.
on this day in 1814, the British captured the White House and burnt it to the ground.
Get out
They
of here.
also burnt a bunch of other political, like I think Congress, the House of Representatives, where they were meeting. I think that was burned down too. So that's what happened back then.
Man, so what we got going on today is like, no big deal.
That's right.
Wow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bocce.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit.
It's your show. You
Not
can do what you want.
Due to all of the, and this, by that, I mean from time to time, like once a year, as opposed to reading something from leadership or from my friends at the Optimist Club or whatever, a quote from a famous person, I put something out there that I have written. And so I was going to go in front of the San Antonio City Council this week, but they got wind of it and canceled the meeting.
That's right.
And
They know who you are.
Yeah. So and it has to do with the removal of the statues. So if you will bear with me, I want to read this and put it into the record. Then we can put it up on the blog and, try to get it out there in one way, shape, or form. So
Good.
if you will, visualize a city council meeting and a presentation being given to a city council meeting. All right?
Yes.
Draw yourself a mental picture.
Listen closely. This is good.
Mr. Mayor, wherever you are, because he's rarely at these meetings, and members of city council, present and in absentia, thanks be to God for allowing me to speak. My name is Dr. Richard Mays Owen. I am not a medical doctor, nor a holder of the master's degree titled Juris Doctorate. I am a scholar, a doctor of philosophy, or PhD as we are titled. The stated topic of my presentation is about the current rage nationwide of removing testimonials to our uniquely American history. It has been brought to my attention that some elected officials in Bexar County, specifically the San Antonio City Council, are considering the removal of a local statue standing proudly in the center of Travis Park downtown. As you ponder this action, I am here this evening to provide you with a history lesson, not war between the states history. Notice I did not say Civil War, not Texas or even San Antonio history. It seems across the entire nation, other jurisdictions are removing these monuments like thieves in the dark of night. It is as if they know their actions are not supported by the majority, so they enact their will upon the people at a time when little can be done about it. I only pray that I am not too late in San Antonio. The history I want to provide is first my own, followed by yours, and others similar nationwide. I started to update my education when I was 56 years young. I completed a challenging master's in business administration at Texas A&M with honors at age 58. I proceeded to get my PhD in leadership studies with concentrated research in business ethics at Our Lady of the Lake University, the Lake as it's known here in San Antonio. I tell you this for the following reason. The professor in my very first PhD course at the Lake started by telling us that we know nothing, period. Our personal opinions had no value. The only thing we could offer that had value was the recognized opinion of other scholars that had researched a specific topic. Imagine how that felt in a newly minted honor graduate of a challenging master's program from a tough university, and at age 58 to boot. Disagreement with scholarly opinions would require additional research on our part. That is how a PhD is born. That is how we earn our degree, defend our position, and it becomes our charter of adding to the body of knowledge, not just consuming. I would submit to you as a member of government, you are no different with all due respect. You know nothing. Your opinion does not matter. Oh, sure, it is only natural you would feel smarter than others. After all, you defeated your opponents to be where you are. That makes you smarter. You won a battle of public opinion to be selected. That makes you smarter. Well, if you think that is the case, it stops right here. All you did was win the honor to represent the opinions of others, not your own.
Amen.
Politics is not a game. You have not won anything. Politics is not a business. You have not defeated a competitor. Politics should be a calling, the calling to represent others. Remember, your opinion does not matter. With that brief history lesson in mind, the vast majority of citizens in San Antonio and the United States, for that matter, the others to which I refer, do not want our history dismantled. We do not need you or anyone else to protect us from our past. Most of us are intelligent and mature enough to learn from our mistakes. It is now time for you to do the same. Learn from your mistakes. The only movement in this country and in this city to return to any form of slavery is being promulgated by our government. Any attempt by government officials to remove and replace our history is an attempt to enslave the citizens in their care to a version of history that is not true. Not based in facts, but opinion. The opinion of government. I will close with the words of my friend and well-known film producer, Mr. Dinesh D'Souza, when being confronted about his view of history at a speaking engagement. Sir, you are welcome to your own opinion, but not to your own facts, as Ms. Surefire is fond of saying. May God guide each of you as you learn to serve and bless you with understanding when you do. And again, thanks be to God for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Richard Mays Owen.
Awesome. Yay. Doc.
Yay! Woo!
That will get delivered to City Hall. It may or may not be before they decide to take down the Travis Monument. I will not be going next week because a conflagration of 9,312 Glibbit organizations are going to go down there and tell them why they should take the statue down, because these little snowflakes are offended. I don't want to get too far off into the weeds, but that's my leadership quote, if you will, time for the evening. I just felt like somebody needed to say it in those particular words. The opinion of government officials does not matter.
Amen.
They are no smarter, as a matter of fact, not as smart as all of the rest of us in the United States, particularly when we put our heads together. So, having said that, we're gonna have an interesting show for you tonight. This is one of those shows where it needs to be like a 5-hour show, just because there is so much to cover and so much out there that we need to refute, if you will, or provide some sanity around what's going on. Before we get into that, we are going to take a trip down memory lane with get a little bit of a historical perspective on things with Uncle Bocce's brief. Uncle Bocce,
Thank you.
hit it.
Thank you, Doc. Yes. And we're continuing with John Adams today. First of all, we're going to look a little bit at his foreign policy, which was better than his domestic policy. At the time, Britain and France were at war. What happened was there was a quasi-war with America between, it's undeclared war, which happened mostly in the Caribbean. The French were attacking our trade ships. Okay, so we kind of like had a tit for tat kind of thing with the French for a while. But then the French crown was toppled during the French Revolution. The United States refused to repay its debt to France. Now, France helped us a lot financially and militarily in our revolution. However, we claimed that we weren't going to pay them back because it was owed by a previous regime.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a boss that tried to tell me that one time.
Yeah, right?
He wound up hanging out a 4th-story window before he knew it.
Mm-hmm. So the French were outraged, and they kept on attacking American ships. And again, there was no declared war. And then the hostilities stopped. They signed some treaty and whatever, and it stopped. Now, Adams sent a delegation to France to negotiate, peace with them. And the French decided that even for Adams, Ben Franklin, and whatever, to see, I think I mentioned this last week, to see the minister, that they would require a large bribe of $250,000. Specifically, that's what they did. So they couldn't. So
The French
Adams,
wanted 250 grand.
they wanted 250 grand just to have an audience, not to, discuss anything with them. Just
Who
to
do
have
they
an
think
audience.
they are? The IRS?
Obviously they do. So Adams was good about this. He refused. He refused to deal.
Well done.
Very, very good character, this man. So the bribery scandal became known as the XYZ affair, and it actually boosted Adams' popularity immensely.
They must have run out of 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah, I guess they did. XYZ, you're right. So the United States Congress acted and approved on July 9th, 1798, authorizing the President of the United States to use military force in the quasi-war with France. Now, that's a brief study of his foreign policy. We're going to get more into it. Domestic policy. He wasn't very good in domestic policy. In fact, one of the first things he did was the Alien and Sedition Acts, which I'll get into in a little bit. But that was one of the things that he pushed and signed into law. There was also the Naturalization Act, which changed the requirements for becoming a citizen. The Naturalization Act of 1798, it required a 5-year residency. It required 14 years, 5 years that they had to apply before they became citizens. And it would take them 14 years. That's up from 2 years in 1790. So that was one of the things that he backed. One of the things about John Adams is that he was a tireless writer. He wrote tons of things. And like I said last week, if you really want to get to know a person, read what they write.
Yep.
if they've written anything. And I tell you, you learn a lot. So after his presidency, he spent the next quarter century just writing. One of his writings was the Novanglis essays, and that was a history of dispute with America from its origin in 1954 to the present time. He goes, I'm sorry,
Wasn't
1754.
That's better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm not living in the past like you always say. Ha ha ha. Okay.
No more ginger ale for him at dinner.
1812, he was encouraged to begin exchanging letters with his rival, Thomas Jefferson. They really did not get along, but somebody convinced him that he needed to start writing, and they didn't. There's tons of correspondence between the two of them. He had a bunch of writing, and this is probably where he excelled during the Revolutionary times, a lot of writing that he did about the Revolution. The letters of John Adams and his wife, Abigail Adams, are published. All this is out on the website, so you can go out and get it. And some of the other works of John Adams, they're
on the Doc Owen Show website.
Yeah,
DocOwenShow.com.
DocOwenShow.com. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Adams lived to see his son, John Quincy Adams, become the 6th president. So he was alive at the time.
Cool.
Now, let's talk a little bit about some legislation. The Alien and Sedition Acts, there were actually 4 acts that were passed by the Federalist-dominated 5th United States Congress and signed into law by President Adams. They made it harder for immigration to become a citizen, like I just said. That was called the Naturalization Act. They allowed the president to imprison or deport non-citizens who were deemed dangerous. Another part of it, or who were from hostile nations, okay? Tell me that history doesn't repeat itself. And criminalized making false statements that were critical of the federal government. That was the actual Sedition Act. Jefferson was in an uproar. He declared that this was unconstitutional. In fact, this probably cost John Adams his second term. It was very, very unpopular with the people and with the opposition. He also created the Navy Department Library. There was a treaty with the Indians called the Treaty of Tellico in 1798, which actually was a peace treaty between the two.
Right.
The only treaty that happened during Adams' time. And there was another treaty called the Treaty of Tripoli, which we know now as Libya. It was actually the whole country was
so
Tripoli.
Adams was a one-term president?
Adams was a one-term president.
Interesting.
And yeah, and
Sure
we'll learn more about that when we start talking about Thomas Jefferson.
Sure made a name for himself in one term, didn't he?
He did.
He got around.
Adams' glory really is revolutionary and pre-revolution or during the revolution. His
writings.
involvement in
Right.
the Declaration and his involvement in the Constitution.
Right.
He was that was his shining time.
Right.
Okay. So the one in the Treaty of Tripoli, there were pirates in the Mediterranean.
Yep.
Most of them from Tripoli,
Yep.
and they were attacking our ships. So he did negotiate a treaty with them to secure American ships in the Mediterranean. There was also a Midnight Judges Act, which reduced the number of Supreme Court from 6 to 5.
Okay.
Now we have 9. So he reduced them to 5. He created 16 new judgeships. A big Supreme Court decision that came down, you might have heard it, the Marbury versus Madison,
Yep.
which was a landmark decision, which basically reinforced the Constitution of judicial review in the United States.
Right.
Okay. He had a lot of federal judiciary appointments. He appointed actually 23 federal judges during his tenure.
Wow. So he built out the district courts, it sounds like.
Yes. Yes.
What today we call the
Yes,
district
exactly.
court.
That's exactly what did happen.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So he rushed to get these names out there.
Right.
His character, the man was very blunt. However, he was a patriot. He loved his country. He was very combative. He was very intelligent. He was opinionated, as you can imagine.
Yep.
And he was subject to mood springs. Mood swings, not springs.
Yeah, well,
Okay?
I've slept on those before.
Yeah, how are we on time?
Close to.
Okay, I'm just going to have a couple of quotes to give you an idea of what Adams' thoughts were.
Okay.
An intimate knowledge, therefore, of the intellectual and moral world is the sole foundation on which a stable structure of knowledge can be erected. So he was talking morality again. And he did mention one time that facts are stubborn things, you know. Another one is, there is danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be trust no man living with power to endanger the public property. I'd say that the Congress now fits that bill completely.
No, they have for quite a while.
Yeah, all right. The Constitution of Government, once changed, okay, and we know there's a big push to change it,
Right.
okay, once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever,
Yep.
okay?
Fact.
That was.
Okay.
Are we done? I just have one more. Statesmen, my dear sir, may plan and speculate for liberty, but it is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles upon which freedom can securely stand. Now, I'm just going to make a comment here that is really not in my notes. The man backed religion and morality, and he was very, very intense on that. The issue that people tried to push on us about the founding fathers was they were just old Christian men with white hair, slave owners. That is not true. That simply is not true. John Adams was not a slaveholder, but John Adams knew what it took to have a country that's based on principles that were derived from ancient times, even the Bible, the Hebrews, all the way through. So that's where it's the principles that the man has, not the fact that he was or was not a Christian.
Correct.
That makes him a great man.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
I think that'll be it for now. Next week we'll start on Thomas Jefferson.
Nice.
That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Who
okay.
are you?
So
where'd you
I
come
am
from?
Uncle Bachi, UNCLEBACI, at DocOwenShow.com. You could also reach me on Twitter as Uncle_Bachi, at Uncle_Bachi. So, folks, I've been trying to get really up to date with Twitter, so please, if you see me out there, make a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Uncle Bachi.
If you see him out there on Twitter, be careful.
That's right.
Give him plenty of room. We've got a commitment to the audience and to the person that we did the interview with, the fellow by the name of Deputy Chief Jimenez from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. We had a great conversation with him a little over 2 weeks ago. Played half of it last week. We're going to do the other half right now, and we will just have to slam, bam, run through what we can with the time that's left after the interview. So enjoy the second half of the conversation with Deputy Chief Jimenez.
Good point. Because as it is, without any organizations, groups, or people trying to instill fear because of SB4 or because immigration debate in the United States, it is hard when you're conducting criminal investigations and you're trying to help victims. But it is hard in itself, because many, take for example, individuals are coming from Central America. What is the law enforcement standard that they see? It's a challenge because probably they have seen individuals in uniform, which are not necessarily law enforcement, they might be military, utilized to oppress them.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
so there's a challenge to come forward. Then you have the plainclothes officers, which in some countries have been utilized also to squash
Absolutely.
and oppress.
Absolutely.
So we already are battling, trying to get these people to come forward and help. Now you're going to be telling them like, oh, if they talk to you, they're going to deport you. That is a misservice to the community. That is misinformation, because in addition to the significant public benefit parole, they are visas. And these visas are to provide permanent residency in the U.S. to the individual and their family members.
Yes, sir.
There is the U visa, which is a non-immigrant visa, which sets aside for victims of crimes and their immediate family members. There is an S visa that is a non-immigrant visa for individual who has assisted a law enforcement agency as a witness. And then there's one is called the T visa, which is a type of visa allowing certain victims of human trafficking and their immediate family members to remain and work in the United States. So there are mechanisms out there, but unless the individuals come forward and work with us, we don't seem to be able to get that message out.
It's tough.
It is a challenge.
That's one of my go-tos. That program right there is one of my go-tos when I say, that there is a way to work this out. So what happens you gave me an example. So what happens in the short term? In other words, the challenge that we hear about a lot is, and the way it works, to tell a lot of times it's SAPD that's picking somebody up for some infraction.
Okay.
No doubt about it. And they wind up booking them into the Bexar County Adult Detention Center,
Okay.
formerly known as the jail, but we've personalized ourselves a little bit, or whatever we've done to it. We made it more politically correct. So it's in the detention center, and that is where they are in the vernacular, I guess. That's where they're booked, or that's where they get the the fingerprints, and that's when we find out or we have an opportunity to find out who they really are, which may be different from who they said they are.
Yes.
Okay. So then that to me, the tricky part is, okay, we got them, and now, but we got to find out if there's a detainer on them, right?
Yes.
And so Bexar County is responsible for reaching out to the ICE folks, the DHS?
Actually,
or how does it work? Tell me. Or is there a list?
It's,
I mean, is it computerized?
It's even, right now, the way it works is...
Because that's the little nit that everybody tries to jump down.
The moment that the individual is processed at the magistrate court.
Yes, sir.
Once
I am so thankful that I don't know this firsthand.
Well, so let's go back to. Let's say that we'll go ahead. I'm gonna be the. Harry is undocumented. I crossed the border illegally, and let's say, for the sake of conversation, because immigration law is complicated. Let's say that I was never encountered by anybody. I was not encountered by Border Patrol. I was not encountered by ICE. I was not encountered by HSI or state or local. I made it. I'm leaving here. And I made that distinction because there's no records of my fingerprints anywhere.
Bingo.
Okay?
Right.
I am an unknown.
Right.
The term is an entry without inspection, an EWI. So I entered the country without inspection. And I'm here, and I've been living here for 5, 6 years.
I was going to say, you got a job.
I got a job. I probably have a girlfriend,
Yep.
USC,
Yes.
and U.S. citizen.
Right.
And one day I come in, and I may have drunk too much, or I may have been having an issue with, I think that she's playing around,
Okay.
and I get into a domestic violence situation.
Okay.
cops are called.
Yep.
Fill the blank, whatever PD or county shows up, they pick me up.
Right.
She's injured. I evidently committed a crime. They take me to get booked. When they bring me to the magistrate office, the first interview there is the typical: your name, your address, where you're from, nationality. I mean, it's part of asking people. It's not.
Sure.
It's nothing different than half of the applications that we complete anywhere for
That's right.
anything.
Correct.
I'm gonna date myself because I remember back in the day when we have the VHS tapes, and we used to rent them from where?
I don't. You're a lot older than I am.
Oh,
You just threw that one out there.
so we have those movie club, right? You have the blockbusters, right?
Okay,
and the movie club, and you apply to get the little application so
Had
you
to,
can
that's
rent them.
right.
They'll ask you the same similar questions.
I remember.
Okay, so right there, that's where that list. The moment that someone specifies
Right.
that was born outside the country,
Uh-huh.
that's a flag for the ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations agent or officer
Right.
to identify you as a potential.
Correct.
Now,
Correct.
looks like it was a week ago, but
I'm so
a few
sorry.
minutes ago.
I'm so sorry. The audience is missing Harry's animation. It's fabulous. Okay, go ahead.
So a few minutes ago, we talked about the detainer.
Yeah.
The ICE ERO officer has to provide probable cause to believe
Yes.
that the individual is removable. So the fact that I was born outside the U.S.,
No problem.
no problem, because it just says you may want to talk to this person more. That's
Correct.
it. That's all it says. Why is that? Because I could have derived U.S. citizenship by other means. I may have married that U.S. citizen, and I
Right.
had a change of immigration status, which
Right.
is completely legal to do. I may have had a U.S. child, and I applied for a change of immigration status, which is legal to do. I may be a non-U.S. born son of U.S. citizens.
Bingo.
I was born abroad.
Right.
I happen to a lot of military men and women that serve overseas.
Happens all the time.
You can be born in Germany or in Guam
And you're
or
a US
in
citizen.
Korea, and you're still a U.S. citizen.
Correct.
Because under the INA of 1952, there are a number of ways you can derive U.S. citizenship.
Right.
That's why the ICE ERO officer just flags that name to later on verify via fingerprints or biometrics, who are you?
Right.
And if you happen to be a U.S. citizen born abroad, nothing's happened to you.
Congratulations.
If you so happen that, in my example, I came in and nobody talked to me, there's not going to be any record of me anywhere. None. So the ICRO officer has to do what? Wait. Wait for my case, because if I'm in charge, if I'm convicted of a felony, now the ICE detainer kicks in.
Ah,
But if the case gets dismissed, guess what? I'm free to go.
free to go.
There's no detainer. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Now, I mentioned
And it's
specifically,
exactly what I knew you would know.
specifically in entry without inspection, because 99% of the individuals trying to make it into the country, legally or illegally, they're trying to make a better life.
Yes, sir.
We know that. We agree. We establish that.
Yes, sir.
But there's that 1%.
Yes.
And until somebody's fingerprints are raw or that biometrics is verified, who are you?
We don't know who the 1% are.
So that 1% could be the criminal. That 1% could be the person trying to do harm to us. That 1% could be the next terrorist. That's why the inspection at the ports of entry, the
Thank you.
inspection
That was
at
going
the ports of
The
seaports,
closer we can put it, the further away we can put it
The
from
safer
our
we are.
metropolitan. It's just like at the airport.
yes,
The further back you move those monitors, the safer we all are.
Absolutely.
I'd be very happy at the airports if they inspected the vehicles before they parked on the grounds.
yeah, and that's a whole different conversation. But
I
that's
know,
a soft,
but
that's a
just-
soft target.
But that's the same principle.
Yes.
To me. In other words, we need to be. Pardon me, but from a personal perspective, we need to be tough at the edges. We need to be very thorough at the edges, not necessarily ugly, but just thorough.
Yeah.
because we got a lot of value here. We're a magnet,
Yes.
and as a country, and as a people, actually, we're pretty good folks, but we don't like to be abused. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, your pitch of cooperation
Yes.
also needs to go on down there.
Absolutely. Because
I'm
remember,
pointing to the border,
yes.
Southie and I both know.
So somebody has not been inspected and coming into the country, it becomes a national security issue.
Yes,
And that's a bad word when you're talking immigration. And that shouldn't be a bad word when you're talking immigration, because who's going to be working?
It's a
National security issue. Yes.
Is a bad word when you're talking immigration?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Because,
help me.
like I mentioned, 99% of the people
Oh,
want to
okay.
make it into the country.
Okay,
They come here to follow the American dream, make a
Yes.
better life.
okay,
But that 1%
yeah.
is the one that is a challenge. That's the 1%.
It's the same
for-
kid in school that gave us all a bad name.
Exactly. The 1%. I'm Hispanic.
It,
I'm Hispanic.
No.
If you haven't noticed by the accent by now.
I know it's because of the way you spell your first name.
Absolutely. So, Jimenez with a J, not with a G. So, if we allowed, as a Hispanic community, to be painted with a broad
Broad brush.
brush,
Right.
I don't like that.
No.
Because even though I am a U.S. citizen,
Correct.
born from U.S. parents, born abroad in the island of Puerto Rico, a commonwealth, a territory,
Right.
the first time I came to the country, meaning the United States, was to serve the U.S. military. I didn't know, I spoke very little English. Not that my English is that good now, but I could understand 90% of what was said to me in English. I was completely foreign to the culture.
Right.
The culture was completely different. I grew up in a Caribbean culture,
Yeah.
very inclusive, extended family.
Sure.
And I came to a new culture, a new language, new traditions, new social interaction.
Right.
But I learned.
Right.
I immersed myself in the culture. I learned the language. I learned the cultures, the traditions. I'm still learning the slang after 30-something years. But that's part of becoming what I am, a U.S. citizen.
Correct.
So for me, when I hear somebody talking broad brush about the Hispanic community, I'm offended and I stop them.
Right. Good.
But I can
Good.
do that because my actions have followed.
You've earned the right.
Absolutely.
You've earned the right.
So in the Hispanic community, we want everyone to see that we're hard workers, that we're decent people, that we want the best for our families. But there's a few, that 1%,
Yeah.
that are going to mess it up for all of us. That's why it's so important that the national security part gets play into the immigration debate, into the secure borders. Because who's going to be deciding about border security and immigration reform? A whole bunch of people inside the Beltway.
Yeah.
Half of which have never seen the border.
I've never been outside the Beltway.
At least I know that's a fact. The ones inside the Beltway, they haven't seen the border.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
so that's why it's so important that we actually look at this topic as a immigration reform, not as a political issue,
I agree.
but it's a national
It's a
security,
security
issue. And we're talking about border security, national security, social, legal, cultural traditions. Yes, we are a nation. We are a nation built upon a mix of cultures and immigration and different countries, but we always have done illegally.
Well,
And you can check who's coming in.
yes, sir. And our pride has always been in exactly what you described. And it's one of our buzzwords on the show, the assimilation.
Yes.
The please, come on down
Yeah.
and join us. I mean, I feel that way about people from California. when
You're not
they
the
come
only
to
one.
Texas. You know, we need to assimilate them just as much as we do people from Central America. So you've been a very, very big help, and in explaining things that needed to be explained. I mean, little nits that were bugging me, and I know they were bugging members of the audience because I get emails and I get dinged every once in a while. You've got some papers we didn't touch.
Yeah.
Is there anything that am I going to go away, half cocked because I didn't hear the rest of the story, or did I not ask the right question, or what am I missing?
I think
You
that,
okay?
I think that you cover everything, and thank you
Okay.
for the opportunity to put this out there. And of course, we're talking in English, and your
Sorry
program
about that.
is going to be
Sorry
heard
about
in
that.
English.
Yes, it is.
But
Yes, it is.
I'm hoping that through this medium, through the radio, through our conversation,
Yes.
Buck, that some of the individuals that are helping the non-for-profits, helping the organizations that are trying to interact with the Hispanic community out
yeah.
there, with the illegal community out there, hopefully they listen and they understand better. And I put myself to your service if we need to come back and rehash any of these topics about the ICE detainer,
Nice.
the policies by ICE, the sanctuary cities bill as before. Absolutely, I'd be delighted because we want the right information out there. We don't want a community living in fear. A community in fear is easily victimized, and we don't want that.
I hear what you're saying. I'm gonna cap it off. I'm a little ambivalent. Yes, we're in English, and I'm always a little ambivalent about trying to deliver the message in Spanish, which I cannot do, but there are people who can. You, I'm sure. Because, and it's not so much when an official like yourself does it. I think that's great. When a politician does it, I think that's kind of like keeping them down on the farm. I think when a politician is talking Spanish to that particular audience, one of the things that audience needs to learn is English, to rise above, to do exactly what you did.
Yep.
To get in. And we're not trying, folks, if you are Hispanic or that's your native language and you're listening to the show, I'm not talking down. As a matter of fact, I'm talking up. I'm trying to elevate to say, I know it's challenging, and there's plenty of resources out there that can help. Trust me, I have friends and workers that I have to communicate with in Spanish, and I've got a little text editor when I send a text, so I get it right. But I'm glad you touched on that, and I mean it's very critical, and Harry nodded his head when I was talking about the difference between a politician and a public official. Those are not necessarily the same thing. Some of them are, but for the most part, it's the public. It's the public employee, a sheriff or a police officer or someone in city government or municipal government of some kind that you need to listen to when it comes to what this is really all about and what your opportunities are to get involved, right?
Yes.
Okay. You hit on a hot button of mine.
Anything else I can help you with?
That's one for each of us. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
We may well take you up on that rematch.
And if we can just summarize it,
Please.
just remember,
You the man.
SB4 does not grant immigration authority to any Texas peace officer. So when SB4...
Immigration enforcement.
Yes.
Okay.
It does not grant any immigration
No, it does
authority.
not.
None whatsoever.
Right.
Simple day-to-day decisions regarding on how a city or county allocates is scarce because we don't have enough personnel.
Right.
Our scarce police resources. We're not going to go out of our way to try to enforce immigration law.
And I don't
That
think
is
it
not what
demands
says.
that you do that.
Absolutely, positively now. And
You know?
and we don't have the resources.
Right.
And just one note, which is going to be kind of like a joke. Just remember that the U.S. Congress is the one that sets the limits of how many people can be deported every year, and that's limited by the budget that they provide to ICRO, that they have to pay for jail beds, for plane tickets, etc. So
So
I
it's
don't
all-
see a mass deportation happening anytime
It's
soon.
always true. Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Barry, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, man.
A pleasure.
We enjoyed it.
I hope you got as much out of that, the two sessions, as we did. It was awfully fact-filled by somebody that has been practicing in that arena for over 30 years. So Deputy Chief Jimenez definitely knows what he's talking about, and he puts it out there. We got about 5 minutes left to cover a bunch of stuff. One of the things I would like to point out is, and there is literally proof published of it via Twitter, of ads that were run on Craigslist and are still being run probably on Craigslist in certain areas, where they recruit these supposed rioters, or whatever you want to call them, or protesters, but they are recruited by a George Soros funded organization, paid $15 an hour to be there. And for your information, both sides in Charlottesville were recruited. In other words, it is a stage play that to make us think that there is huge civil unrest in this country. Just this week, the United Nations, in a very, not unprecedented, but very rare statement, gave a pre-warning to the world of civil war in the United States of America. Folks, please do not buy into any of this bull sugar. It's just nonsense. The whole thing is being orchestrated by what you will hear referred to as the deep state, the people who make millions and gabillions of dollars off of war and unrest of any kind and any shape. So, I mean, just don't. I know it's very difficult you can't ignore it, but please don't go blindly and pick a side and think that you have to be on one side or the other. That is exactly what our president, say it after me, President Donald J. Trump, has been trying to tell us. And, I mean, he was speaking so much of the truth the other night during his speech that MSNBC and CNN cut the feed and preferred to show a test pattern on their screen than to give their audience the input that the president was providing. Another thing, a lot of conservative organizations that you have heard us talk about for years, one of them called Act for America, another one called Jihad Watch. These are good, legitimate, conservative news organizations and movements. PayPal has decided to cut them off. In other words, they can no longer take in payment nor funding via PayPal. And a lot of people click the PayPal button, to get the contributions. And PayPal has just decided that they no longer fit the pattern of a PayPal type organization, so they cut them off.
Yeah. And they've since rescinded.
They rescinded on Jihad Watch. Have they rescinded on ACT?
I don't know specifically.
It's a rolling thing. In other words, they do one, they they get a bunch of pushback on it. They do another. They're not going to quit. And just a day or two out of these people's income can be quite costly to these organizations. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.